Our next speaker is Dr. Thomas Schaller, who's a professor and chair of the Political Science Department here at UMBC. He's now in his 19th year here and teaches courses in American government, including the American presidency, interest groups in lobbying, and campaigns and elections. He's the author of a number of books and a former political columnist for the Baltimore Sun. He's published commentaries in some little-known venues, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, the Boston Globe, just to name a few, and has appeared on some little-known shows, ABC News, The Colbert Report, NPR, All Things Considered, and Talk of the Nation on PBS. In Talk of the Nation, PBS, The Travis Smiley Show. Since 2004, Dr. Schaller has given lectures on American politics and elections in more than 20 countries on behalf of the U.S. State Department. I think you're in for a treat with this one.
Thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon, everybody. I have the challenging task of following Kay and Govind, and that's quite a task, given how impressive they are. I'm going to try to talk today about how you make a citizen, which is something we don't really often think about, but I have to a certain degree, as part of my job. So my talk today is about civic lessons, teaching politics in an era of civics decline. Now, I have 3 college degrees. I'm the first person on either side of my family to complete even a bachelor's degree, and I have a PhD in political science, and you heard all that other stuff about me. But that, frankly, makes me no more qualified than probably most of you in the room to build a bridge or fix a cavity, do your taxes, or become the most successful basketball coach, male or female, in Division I college basketball history. And yet, you wouldn't ask a non-expert to do any of those things, but we ask non-experts every day, certainly every 4 years, every 2 years, to have input into our government. We're about to have a presidential election. Every 4 years, we say it's the most important election in our lifetimes. That's probably not true, though this is a pretty important one, I would argue. We'd be foolish to have non-experts do tasks that require expertise, and yet the curse or blessing, depending on how you want to look at it, of a democracy is that every single citizen, regardless of how familiar they are with politics and policy, whether they've been a citizen for just a month and recently moved to the country or recently gained their citizenship or recently turned 18, or whether they've been voting in presidential elections and have run for president, all have a singular opportunity and obligation to participate in our government and select our leadership. So how do we get our student citizens, right? The vast majority of whom are, like really most of us to a certain degree, non-experts, but are qualified by birthright. How do we get them to take this responsibility seriously? Now let's back up and talk about what those students are like when they arrive in my Poly 100 class. Poly 100 is Introduction to American Government. It's required of all majors, but I have students from all different departments and different programs and majors because it's a social science requirement. So I have engineers and art history students and theater and dance and you name it, right? According to the Annenberg Public Policy Center in a 2014 poll, only about a third of Americans can tell you the 3 branches of government. About a third can name all 3, and a third can name 1 or 2. Only about 1 in 4 Americans know that it takes a 2/3 vote to override a presidential veto. Only 1 in 5 Americans, 1 in 5 Americans incorrectly think that a 5-4 Supreme Court decision can be overturned by Congress and reconsidered by the courts. So we're flunking high school civics, and in fact, a recent study in 2010, which they do a panel study of 4th graders and then 8th graders and 12th graders every 4 years, shows that we're seeing some progress. We have a kind of a middling civics education and persistent socioeconomic and racial disparities in terms of that performance. Look carefully here at the scale. You can see the top 120 points and the bottom 110 or 120 points are cut off this graph. So it looks like it's a high score, but it's really in the middle range. And you can see significant difference in civics knowledge between white students, 8th, 12th, and 4th grade taken across time, and black students, as well as a race gap between white and Hispanic students. Not much of a difference on gender. Young girls are actually eclipsing young boys now, but you can see on the right, and this is also sort of an overlap or a proxy for the previous slide, since there are significant socioeconomic differences between white Americans and non-white Americans, you can see that those who are eligible for free lunch or a subsidized lunch have less civics information than essentially more affluent students. So our students arrive, and these are in some cases more affluent and better educated students. I don't even want to think about the students who don't get into UMBC and don't ever end up or take a Poly 100 class. Even among these students, we have a big civics gap here. Meanwhile, of course, I don't think I have to explain this if you turn your TV on or your radio on for about 2 minutes right now, we have a very polarized country. And I could show you 20 different graphs that indicate that. And that's true on both the mass level among voters and it's true among elites. I could show you charts that show the polarization of voting in the Senate and voting in the House. We even have an almost record number of unified state legislatures because the red states are becoming redder and the blue states are becoming bluer. Here's just one measure, partisan polarization in the approval rating of presidents. You can see that Republicans with the red line approve of Republican presidents more and Democrats approve of them less. But the key thing to look at this as you look from left to right is look at how big the beige area is getting. The two most polarizing presidents in American history are Barack Obama and George W. Bush, which means you either think they're the most polarizing in terms of their politics, even though Bush ran as a uniter, not a divider, and Obama ran as no black America, no white America, no red America, no blue America, only the United States of America. Either they're the most polarizing presidents in American history, which I don't think is true, or the country is basically more polarized than it's ever been, which I do think is true. In fact, when you look at who votes and who gives to campaigns, people, we don't even trust each other anymore. If you ask Democrats if they have a mostly unfavorable view of Republicans, they turn out at about 46%. But if they have a very unfavorable view, they turn out at 58%, 12 points more. Same for Republicans. Those with a very unfavorable view of the other side turn out at 18 percentage points higher. So we have a very polarized country, and we have a civics deficit for young people, and frankly for people over 18 and non-college freshmen as well. And of course, we have a very diverse country right now. 56.4%. That is the share of our freshman class that's non-white. So we have people coming from all different backgrounds, all different experiences, race, gender, obviously, religious backgrounds, political identities. So how do you reach this group of civics challenge, is a polite way to put it, freshmen, some of whom aren't really in your class because they're planning on becoming a political science major, they really have aspirations of becoming an electrical engineer. How do we encourage this civics challenge group? My answer is sort of take the ideological and partisan politics out of it. They're going to figure all that stuff out for themselves anyway. I try to just do two things in Poly 100. And I was raised in a Catholic family with a German-American father and an Italian-American mother, who was the Undersecretary of Guilt in the Carter administration. So I know a little something about using guilt to try to compel people to do things. And the first thing I tell these students is you're lucky to be in that chair. There's a fixed number of chairs either here or throughout the system. Not everybody gets a seat, right? And this education, even if you're working hard, even if you paid full freight, many of them, of course, have scholarships based on need and other sorts of talents. Even if you paid full freight, you or your parents, you're still getting a subsidized degree, right? The USM budget, I think, is about 10% of the state budget, and UMBC's is 10% of that. So a penny, 1% of every dollar that Maryland taxpayers spend goes right here to UMBC. And your degree, yes, it's gotten more expensive than when I was an undergraduate, and tuition was $750 for a full 12 courses or higher full-time load in the SUNY system where I went to school. And the payout is there too. The difference in lifetime earnings between a person with a bachelor's degree and a person with a high school degree is just shy of $1 million. And if you think about the compound value of investing that, right, you don't just get it all at the end when you retire, you're earning that across time. That's the difference between being a homeowner and a home renter. That's the difference between being able to put something away for your retirement and not. So I tell students, despite the quality of the education you're getting in this class right now, you're getting a $1 million degree. And you are. The second way, and I can't prove this because I haven't surveyed all the faculty, I think I'm the only faculty that actually shows us tax returns on a PDF on the screen, and I do. And with the exception of my Social Security number, I show them the numbers. I tell them they have to be invested in the system because the political economy, the decisions that your government makes, we talk mostly about national politics in Washington, but Annapolis or whatever your respective state legislature, they affect your life. They affect your life greatly. So I show them, for example, where I can take money pre-tax up to, I think the current federal limit is $16,000 or $17,000, and put it into my 403B savings and invest those taxes instead of paying taxes on it now and taking it as cash. I show them how the home mortgage deduction, I can deduct my taxes in the city of DC where I live, and I can deduct the interest on my mortgage and how much that saves me, how much the government is subsidizing my condominium in Washington, D.C. And then we talk about those things. We talk about how the number one and number two tax preferences, the things that the government spends the most on in tax deductions, are the employer credit to subsidize health care. It's about $260 billion a year, okay? And the home mortgage deduction, which is about another $90 billion. $1/3 trillion every year the government spends for people who, by definition, own a home and have a job. And then we take a look at, well, how much is it spending on people who don't have a job or don't have a home or maybe have neither? So they're going to be politically invested in the system. The decisions that they make are going to affect their lives. And I try to get them from their wallets, from their pocketbooks, to think about maybe you owe something back to the state, and maybe you better be paying attention to what the state does, because it's going to affect you and your family and your livelihoods for the rest of your life. Thank you.